Meth.
Hey, Bret Starr.
How you doing?
How are you?
I'm
doing great.
I'm fantastic. What a strange world we live in.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement.
Things have been kind of crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, we're coming on to the end of the year, starting to think about holidays and think about 2022. Hard to believe we're saying that, but here we are.
I just still can't believe. I mean, I know it's like a cliche to get towards the end of the year and be like, oh, I can't believe. But this year feels different.
And how does it feel different to you, Bret?
I mean, it feels like it was the blink of an eye. You know, I don't know what it was, but in many ways to me, like 2020 felt, kind of long. Mm-hmm. And 2021 just felt like, it just whizzed by. And
yeah,
I don't know. It was almost like almost like the same every day. And because it was like the same every day, there were no like moments that mark the passage of time or the seasons. Anyway, it's good to be talking to you, and I suppose this will probably be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is our last conversation this year.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we're going to have our little holiday break and then jump back in January.
Cool. Well, wishing you a wonderful upcoming holiday.
And you and your family as well.
Thank you very much. Any big plans?
No, just, spend some time with family and just going to enjoy going offline for 10 days.
Well, enjoy it because it is a dark and treacherous world. What do they say in Game of Thrones?
What could you be referring to, Bret Starr?
The night is dark and filled with horrors, I think is the something like that. I don't know, from the Game of Thrones. I don't know, man. It's just a crazy place. It's like, okay, so we'll get to some very specific topics that you sit around your industry briefing, and that will probably be covered in the upcoming Work Tech Weekly newsletter. But, there's just times when a bunch of things happen all at the same time that are really weird, and they kind of shake, the foundation of reality a little bit. And you're like, wow, are we like, on this rock in space that's being propelled out, into an ever-expanding and chaotic universe? And, you get things like nocturnal tornadoes ripping through the U.S., just...
Yeah, that Edwardsville tornado that's 20 miles from my house. So that was a pretty wild night.
Insane. And, it's not like it's the first time, that there's been tornadoes at night, but suddenly, everyone's talking about nocturnal tornadoes, just like everyone was talking about atmospheric rivers. When was the first time you ever heard the phrase atmospheric river?
When I was living in San Francisco and one tore through, and I have never experienced rain like that. And I thought that, you go through enough Texas thunderstorms that, you know what rain is all about. That was like a foot of rain in less than a day.
But
like geysers coming out through manholes,
yeah.
People on canoes going down the street. It was mayhem.
But doesn't it seem like the notion of the atmospheric river has entered the public consciousness, more today than at any point ever? Like, I feel like every time I lift up a rock now, I see atmospheric river. Like it's in every article.
Well, we're getting into winter. We'll get polar vortex.
Polar vortex. I mean, there's just like all these labels for things that I'm sure have been happening for a long time, but that suddenly sound very menacing.
Yeah, Polar Vortex sounds more like a metal band, but Atmospheric River sounds more new agey, like there'd be a lot of synth in it.
Yeah, Polar Vortex is like from Finland or something. Or like
yeah, exactly.
Very cold death metal. But it reminds me of like in 2020 when we went, we're talking about like murder hornets and stuff like that, and then suddenly we're in a pandemic. But anyway, on the long list of things to be afraid of, there's this crazy Log4j security crisis going on. And, that's the sort of thing that, like, you read about, and you're like, oh, that sounds really bad. The greatest, like, security vulnerability in, history, but then you don't really ever talk to anybody that actually experienced any negative consequences from it. So it all seems like a lot of nothing. But I started reading about this log 4J security issue only a couple of days ago, and then when you and I were talking today, you said, well, we got to talk about the Kronos ransomware thing. And I didn't know it, but these two things are related. So what's going on with Kronos in terms of, a long list of shit to be, worried about in the closing moments of 2021?
Well, I mean, it's still to be determined, but they were evidently hit with a ransomware attack, and it could force its system offline for several weeks. There's right now it's only speculation about whether it's the Log4j exploit or not. But I mean, when you look at like some of the clients that have been disclosed that are having an issue, like the New York Metropolitan Transit Authority said that their payroll and shift keeping systems are inaccessible. We were just talking to somebody not that long ago that said that their spouses going into a meeting to talk about this at their employer. Like, I mean, I think it's touching on a lot of potential clients, but I mean, I don't know that this is something that's necessarily related to something Kronos or UKG is doing or not doing. It just seems like they're as much a victim here as anybody.
No, and that's what is, I think, one of the really unfortunate side effects of bigger security vulnerabilities and flaws like this. I mean, this is classified as a 0-day flaw, and from a rating perspective, it has a severity score of 10 out of 10. So
that's bad, right?
I think it's bad. It sounds kind of bad, but I've been reading articles in kind of non-technical publications that really dumb all this stuff down, for people like me. And, basically it is a pervasive security vulnerability in Java. And what's going on is that it's the component in a Java library that logs error messages in applications. And that within that library, there is a vulnerability that was only discovered like a week ago or something like that, but is huge and basically allows hackers to get the keys to the kingdom, as they say. Yeah. I mean, they can get in and get everything. And you take a brand like UKG and a brand like Kronos, and it's almost like when South Africa, came out and said we have this variant, and then everyone shut down South Africa, even though it's like they, they just did the right thing and reported it. It's right. It has nothing to do with Kronos whatsoever, and that's the really important thing is it's not a flaw in the way that Kronos developed their software.
Right.
It is a flaw in the meta framework that everybody taps into to run their applications if they're in the cloud. But because Kronos is one of the first names, even though it's not verified that it's associated with the Log4j kind of vulnerability, it probably is. And everyone is going to assume that Kronos has shitty software or something like that, and that they basically didn't do something that they were supposed to do to prevent this from happening.
Yeah, but I think that to kind of bring this back to a brand level, I think that what's going to be interesting to watch is this is sort of a different brand reality that all tech brands, but especially work tech brands, have to exist within now, where 5 years ago, if something like this happened, and there were rumors that this big brand or that big brand had been hacked, and it's just they kept it all very much under the radar. You could bury something like this a few years ago and try to address it on the down low. Now we live in a world where you have to be, as a brand, transparent about these sort of data breaches, or else there's a breach of trust with your customers. And when you think about like Kronos and Ultimate coming together, forming UKG, these are two very blue blood trusted brands. And so the way that they're going to respond to this is going to be very interesting to watch, because I think in a lot of ways, I mean, certainly this is a terrible situation for both of them. But it's also, I think, unfortunately going to be a reality that work tech brands, especially the major ones, are going to have to live with. That they're all, if you have that many people's personal information, social security numbers, you're going to be a target. How do you handle this, not only from a technical security perspective on the back end, but how do you deal with this from a crisis communications and a brand perspective on the front end? And so I think from that standpoint, it's going to be interesting to watch. And as you know, from working with brand for decades now, it's the value of a brand is not in doing everything right or not making a mistake. It's how do you handle those mistakes when they happen? Are you able to deal with them in a way that actually reaffirms and builds trust with your clients, or do you do it in a way that damages that trust that you've built?
Yeah, I agree. And there's just so many correlations between, what is going on with, first of all, just going back to the security thing for a moment. This is not, just isolated to, big enterprise computing systems that have, information, personal identifiable information like social security numbers and stuff like that. I know of a small professional services organization that recently became the victim, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, not us, but became the victim of a ransomware attack. And I was talking to the owner, and the owner said, look, I had to bring in the FBI because if I pay the ransom, my lawyers tell me, if I pay the ransom, I can actually go to prison because of the U.S. policy around how ransomware attacks have to be handled. Because if it's a known sponsor of terrorism and I pay the ransom to unlock my files and get all my stuff back, then I will, basically run afoul of, federal laws around sponsoring terrorism. And so, there are small businesses, there are large businesses, there are people who are clients of, companies that are large, like Kronos, et cetera. And so this is something that is going to impact everyone over time. And, it kind of reminds me, of like when, COVID first hit and, Canada would be doing great and the United States would be doing awful. Right. Mm-hmm. And then there would be all these, value assessments made about what's wrong with that country that's doing bad. And then the U.S. would be doing great and Canada would get popped, or, Europe would be going through a wave or something. And there was always this rush to judgment about policy, politics, et cetera, whatever. And it was really how, states, countries, groups responded that, cemented the story of their brand within that context. And I think that's what you're saying with, kind of security. It's inevitable that there are going to be security breaches for major brands. And the question is, how do people respond to it and how are they remembered, based on that response? But, there used to be back in the day, people would come to us all the time and say, we want to run a competitive campaign that targets a vulnerability of our competitor. So, hey, so-and-so just announced that this terrible thing happened or that company had a security breach. We're a big competitor to Oracle and we want to target, the top 50 Oracle clients and, et cetera, et cetera. And we never really thought that was a great idea.
Well, and the reason we did, we thought never thought it was a great idea was it never worked.
Never worked.
It's just like it was always a quick turn, urgent campaign. Oh, we got to get this conquest campaign out there, and it's just like you drop everything, you put all this effort into it, you launch it, and the fact of the matter is that they don't work because people don't like a client doesn't like getting that sort of a exploitative, self-aggrandizing message from a competitor, they're sort of like, well, aren't you an asshole?
Yeah, and
is really the response.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with telling the positive story of your brand or creating a great customer experience. It's basically just, hating on other people and trying to create so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt about, that competitor that they come over to you. But if you run a campaign like that, like anybody who's sitting back right now saying, oh my God, Kronos is vulnerable, UKG is vulnerable, let's get out there and run a bunch of campaigns that talk about security being the most important thing, and that emphasize our approach to privacy and security, etc. You're pretty much sealing your fate that it's going to happen to you, and that whatever messages that you put out there and whatever one client that you're able to win over to your side, when it happens to you, it's going to be so much more significant because that's the context in which you brought somebody in. The fear, uncertainty, and doubt of this thing that you amplified through your marketing. And so, I would just caution and counsel everyone out there who thinks that they're going to, use this as a moment to, gain, market share or whatever against Kronos because of what's going on with them. That might not be the best approach.
Yeah, and I sort of feel like the all of the big HCM powers are all equally petrified by the possibility that this could happen to them. So, I feel like I would be surprised if we saw that happen, except with maybe, you never can tell what a rogue sales team is going to do. But, we've been talking about this and writing about this in our brandscapes for years, that the importance of security is only going to increase. And, as we see work tech growing exponentially and expanding, the security aspect, whether it's how do you enlist employees as allies and not being the weak link in the chain, how do you train them on security? You're seeing a lot of different point solutions emerge, just addressing this specific point, and I think that it's only going to increase. So,
well, you're right, and the fallout from something like this happens over years, and the biggest source of security issues or hacking or whatever is social engineering. And social engineering is, for anyone listening who doesn't, kind of know what social engineering is specifically, it's basically old con artist moves, on the internet. It's the person who responds to a text that they got and, suddenly is sending credit card information and photos of driver's license and stuff like that because the storyline is so compelling. It's the phishing email that says, "Hey, your bank account has been compromised," and then you click on it and provide all of your account details and everything, and then people steal all your shit. And what happens in a situation like this is that a ransomware attack ends up. I should preface all of this, by the way, by saying something that I don't think I've ever said on this podcast, which is I am a licensed private investigator. And it's the first thing that I tell people at cocktail parties. But a lot of private investigation comes down to deep web, dark web, OSINT, open source intelligence investigation, stuff like that. And so almost all of the interesting cases that I've seen over time have had some aspect of fraud or security, kind of components to them. And so I say all that because what's about to happen is, sure, there's this first wave, this, kind of brute force ransomware attack that gets all of this contact information. But what happens next is that all of that contact information gets posted on the deep and dark web for sale. And then just like with the Ashley Madison, a controversy back in the day, and then people will buy that and they'll use it for the social engineering hacks. And so the more information that somebody can get about an individual, your contacts, identifying information, et cetera, the more convincing they can be in their social engineering attacks. And so it has a cascading impact. And so you're absolutely right. I think this notion that everyone has to be the first and last line of defense is going to become, I wish Mercer were here so that, he could, Mercer's the guy who's been telling us this about our own business for, like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So we all need to, try harder and do more, basically. As a backdrop against, all this other stuff that has happened and continues to happen over the last 2 years, from political instability to social instability, to concerns about the economy, to murder hornets, to security breaches, to, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is taking a tremendous toll on people's mental health. Yeah. And I don't think that, everybody's known about the relationship between mental health and well-being and your ability to perform well in life and in your job. Everybody's known all that forever. And a lot of people in organization have given lip service to it, but nobody's ever really done anything about it. Businesses haven't really stepped in a significant way to provide comprehensive, holistic well-being resources as, just the right thing to do to create a great work experience. Most well-being initiatives have been focused on, the high-risk population from a physical health perspective and trying to reduce insurance premiums and self-insured environments in large companies. But, if you take the, abundance mindset view of, what opportunities are coming out of the pandemic, one of those opportunities is definitely the recognition of, the company's role and the role of leadership inside organizations to ensure the mental health and well-being of people inside the organization. And we're seeing that manifest in significant ways in the work tech industry and, in everything the work tech industry touches. So you have been writing a lot about and reporting a lot on, the emergence of, mental health and mental health solutions for businesses for a long time. But this has been a pretty significant, stretch of a few weeks. What's going on with the world of well-being, mental health, et cetera, in work tech?
Well, I mean, it's just, you're seeing just more funding go into startups in this area. And what's interesting is you're seeing kind of this, mix of B2C, then kind of moving into B2B in the employer space. So like, last week, San Francisco startup Cerebral got a $300 billion Series C, and it's really kind of like trying to be a one-stop shop for behavioral health care, and offering treatment options. And so, starting off kind of more, direct-to-consumer or B2C focus, now it's just like, they've got like partnerships with all the major health providers and a growing number of employers. So, I think that's a really interesting area that we're seeing is the numbers that are going into mental health just kind of keep increasing. But even like getting, outside of just straight up mental health, you're seeing more sort of direct health care. Like, can we offer as an employer access to health care in the workplace? And so, kind of direct access to that. And like there was another big announcement with Nomi Health out of Utah. Mark Newman's new company landed probably the largest Series A in work tech, $110 million. So that was pretty noteworthy as well.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a really interesting world that's about to be surfaced by all of these kind of rounds of investment and rapid growth of, companies that are focused on mental health, et cetera, because so much of it has been behind the veil for so long for a lot of different reasons. First of all, mental health, underlying mental health conditions or mental health generally as a topic was either stigmatized or, basically, not safe for work, kind of material. And so, you still talk to a lot of, executives in large organizations and mid-sized organizations who are afraid to engage with their workforce on mental health issues because they're afraid they're going to be in violation of like some HIPAA requirement, or that it's somehow kind of not appropriate or something like that. So there's still some issues around just mental health as a category that are provide in the minds of a bunch of people some landmines.
Well, and I think that's indicative of the shift that we've seen broadly across what is the employee experience in basically every employment setting. If you go back 20 years to when I was working as an employee communications consultant inside of large organizations, there was still that defensive HR mindset where it's just like an employer didn't want to offer any sort of meaningful financial guidance around something like your 401k investments. They didn't want to provide any kind of meaningful behavioral health or mental health because they were worried about being too intrusive, or bottom line it was, we don't want to get sued. We don't want to take responsibility. So here's just enough to fulfill some level of obligation, and then you go take care of it, Mr. or Ms. Employee, and we don't want to hear about it. And where we are now in, headed into 2022 is employers no longer can do that. They have to be able to provide not only, I think, meaningful options across the board in lots of areas of either health and welfare benefits, behavioral health and mental health, financial wellness, across a lot of different areas, but also it's just like, I was reading this the other day, I think it was something out of, I don't know if it was a story at EBN or some other benefits publication. They were talking about this is the year of the empathetic employer, and that really, and it's like you can't fake it. You have to really care about your employees' well-being, and you have to adopt programs and initiatives that are in support of being that empathetic employer. I have to just think that all of these moves that we're seeing, especially in the benefit space and the mental health, even to the extent that, outside of strictly well-being and getting into, coaching and feedback, are all just indicative of that really tectonic shift.
Yeah, to me, it, all comes back to the reverse mullet. It's like,
it does.
Put the party in the front, and the business in the back. And a lot of the, that kind of defensive posture towards mental health or, financial guidance or whatever was really entrenched in a position of defending the shareholder interests. And with, the just kind of lack of recognition that, the way to erode shareholder value is to basically not take care of, your people.
Right.
And, it's kind of zen, but you can't be empathetic hoping to drive a business outcome. You have to be truly empathetic, and then don't let the fucking world come in and tell you that you need to grow up and, act like a business, because that's where businesses go to die.
Right. Well, I think that just a lot of it is every brand needs to know whether you're going to take a stand on something. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a crusading brand on, whatever. You just have to be authentic to yourself and be willing to not compromise that authenticity, especially when it's in regards to how are you going to take care of your people? Because at the end of the day, if you take care of your people, they will take care of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you keep pulling on that thread, right? And it's like, okay, so, attitudes are changing around the, recognition of the role of mental health in the relationship between a business and, the people who work in that business. And so whereas before it was, hey, we have to stay away from that, it was, stigmatized in some way, or it was just a no-fly zone because you don't want to open yourself to liability or risk or whatever. That's coming under the microscope, and that's changing. But there's also just these other, kind of things to look out for. That most people don't really think about. So you mentioned a lot of these organizations are getting these big rounds of funding. It started with a consumer focus, and now they're going, kind of into, business. When you talk about mental health inside organizations, there's a very limited number of channels to deliver support for mental health, right? So you can have a content-based approach right? That's like digital content, that's, meditation apps, that, et cetera, that is scalable inherently because it's curriculum driven, content driven. You create it once, it can be used on multiple people's, journeys. That I don't think anyone would argue that, many of these programs are not successful and useful. They are. Meditation, delivered through apps like Calm and Headspace and stuff like that works. And there's lots of evidence that it works in both, a consumer individual context, but also in a business context. But then you start getting into these other areas that, kind of blur the lines between, care delivery and healthcare systems. And basically where that care is delivered and how people get access to it. So a lot of these, programs are not based on content; they're based on coaching, or they're based on people who are actually delivering therapy, like CBT and stuff like that in phone calls or virtual sessions or whatever. And a lot of these organizations are, their success or failure is based on the quality of the community of coaches that they're able to bring to the table. And I think there's going to be a lot of conversations about that that haven't really, been had before because people just kind of ignored. It's like, who are these coaches? Where do they come from? And what you find is that in some instances, these coaches have a very arm's length. They're almost like Uber drivers. It's like they have 5 platforms that they contribute to. They might be on Talkspace. They might be on this one over here, whatever. And they're just trying to fill their book with rides. And then other, organizations, like I would say, Better Up is a great example. Have you ever gone onto the Better Up, kind of like website and tried to go through their coaching application?
No, I haven't.
I did this. Because I fucking love Better Up. I think they're awesome. And I didn't apply to be a coach because I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to apply to see how rigorous the process was and what the relationship is like. And it's an incredibly rigorous process, and you get hired by Better Up. Like you don't become like a contractor that can have like five other relationships. It's like if you're going to deliver mental health coaching, you have to have the right certifications, the right education, the right licenses. Et cetera, and you have to meet a pretty high standard, and they're constantly building, kind of their community of coaches to bring to the table. So have you seen any, kind of like, I don't know, just increased awareness around what the delivery models are for mental health inside organizations?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a growing awareness around that, and I think that one of the big issues is the scalability issue. I mean, just like everything else, you're running into the talent gap. There's just not enough talent to go around, and at the end of the day, especially where you're getting into whatever type of coaching you're talking about, you can't just wing it. You need to actually have some credentials, and so I think especially as more money kind of floods into this space, more market demand continues to fuel that growth. What I'm wondering is, my big question: can these brands scale their solutions to meet that growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, since the theme of this podcast today is basically becoming fear and dread and uncertainty and all that, I mean, I got to ask. Is this one area where potentially the amount of funding and the amount of growth could have some really negative unintended consequences? So let me play that out a little bit, right? So you're a mid-size organization. We've got getting close to 100 folks. So take us as an example. And I'm just going to make up a story. None of the stuff that I'm about to say is true, but just as an example. If somebody comes to me, or if we identify, someone on our team as, a 100-person company that is struggling with mental health issues, one of our first goals might be to, or one of our first avenues might be to, basically hook them up with a therapist or counselor that we know. It's like, oh, yeah, I go to, Dr. O'Malley. Dr. O'Malley's great. You should check out Dr. O'Malley. Well, the problem is that I've sent so many people in my family and friend network to Dr. O'Malley that Dr. O'Malley can't see anybody anymore. And this is not just me. I mean, this is really happening. Like, you can't get in to see a therapist if you want to see a therapist right now, because they are overwhelmed with business and they all have closed practices, et cetera. Okay, so, option 1 is gone. And then you start getting into like option 2 and option 3 and option 4. And so option 2 is probably like, okay, let's implement, some digital content, that gets you, part of the way there, maybe opens your mind to some things you could work on or whatever. But then you get to, okay, well, people need to have meaningful experiences with therapists and coaches. Yeah. And so we're going to buy this solution, and we are going to put our people into conversations with their coaches. And I'm not sure how much due diligence actually goes into, vetting what the coaching community looks like. And with this talent, so you take all of these factors, right? It's like the established therapists, as an example, the psychologists, the psychiatrists. You can't get an appointment. There is a talent squeeze. It's nearly impossible to hire anybody, right? On and on and on. And meanwhile, there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars going into mental health companies that are, recruiting people and content to, kind of bring in to companies. And where are those people coming from? And is it possible that we're creating a situation where we're, going to be putting our employees into unsafe or non-productive conversations and relationships with unvetted coaches because of all the velocity with which these companies need to consume the funding that they've
Well,
received?
even beyond that, it's just like everything else in the economy where they can't fill these positions. What you're going to see happen is, what can AI and automation offer? What can, conversational bots offer? And I think that what you're going to end up seeing is that push toward automation, and especially in something where you got something highly regulated.
So are you afraid that, this might be creating a potentially perilous situation?
Well, of course. No, I think it's, we're moving headlong, across kind of the world of work into automation, AI, bots, whatever. And it's just like, and it's examples like this that are going to continue sort of driving. I guess I'll use the word innovation, although I'm a little, trying to replicate or replace human interaction with any level of automation. I'm not sure is a good thing in the long term, but I don't know that we're going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. And this is the reason I bring all this up, by the way. Here's the big picture for me. There is so much uncertainty in the world right now. And innovation and change is happening at such a rapid pace that nobody knows what the hell is going on.
Right.
This represents a huge opportunity for companies and for individuals. And the opportunity is you have to step into the void and help people make sense of all this. And so the questions that I just brought up, the things that we've been talking about, security, mental health, the talent squeeze, the incredible amount of funding that's going into organizations that are pursuing new models of service delivery and product delivery that are so invasive, and it's the wrong word, but I'm saying this, like, they're so deeply personal and tied to the human condition,
right,
that nobody really knows how to put all these things together into a strategy or a solution that actually solves the problem that they're trying to solve or helps them become the company that they want to become. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a tremendous opportunity for, organizations, for companies, for people to step into that void and create meaning because it's a moment of great transition. And the only thing that, I would ask, or that I would hope during that process, is that people do it in an authentic way. So instead of waiting for the market to ask, where do your coaches come from? Or, how does that AI stuff really work and what's the evidence? That it doesn't become a product marketing initiative of people creating pretty words to sell what they got, but that we actually as an industry move towards creating solutions in a responsible and ethical way that achieve the intended outcome by bringing novel solutions to broadly shared problems. And I think that's the real opportunity.
Well, and I think even beyond that, I mean, we talk about, there's a lot of, as you pointed out, a lot of dark clouds, and a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We just go ahead and we want to wrestle with, because that ambiguity is great conversation fodder. But where, we've seen the opportunity for these changes to be transformational to any brand, certainly with our brand, has been the courage to stay positive in the face of brutal, facts, things that maybe there is that darkness out there. But how do you still find a way to stay positive with all of that? And I think that that's both from a product perspective and a brand perspective, sort of the challenge and the opportunity for work tech brands in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that that's, kind of, the big picture and the point is that it is really easy and gratifying on a real, instinctive level to commiserate with people about all of the terrible shit that could happen, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy. I mean, if one person starts, unwinding and going into an anxiety spiral and, talking about all of the doom scenarios, et cetera, I mean, that shit's contagious, and, misery loves company. And I think that, it's really such a tremendous opportunity to, focus on what good can be done. And to really assess, how significant, these negative consequences are that we are always fearing. Because I think so many times, so many decisions are made from a base of fear or a scarcity mentality of, this is a gold rush and we've got to get ours before the moment passes. Yeah. And here we are, getting close to touching the nerve of work tech for the first time. You know what I mean? Like the real stuff. We're so close. And it's such a great opportunity for people to take all of this creative investment, creative capital. I mean, I just listened to this podcast about how venture capital was created in the United States. And it's such an interesting history and just how it all evolved. There's just so many kind of regulations and, things, behind the scenes that we don't think about, but we have this amazing, thriving venture capital model in the United States that, often is maligned in so many ways, but here it is at its highest and best use and purpose, which is innovating and bringing solutions to the table for real problems, and to unlock real opportunities. And I think focusing on that, and pursuing that position of not just trying to sell shit,
right.
I think is the real opportunity. I don't know.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that that's where we're going to see successful brands are able to make that leap. And I think that brands that still want to kind of follow the old kind of turn and burn, both sales and marketing, but also product development models, are not going to see the next few years treat them kindly.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's a good thing to end on, because, it's the end of the year, and, this thing will probably be, published here in a few days or whatever. And then, people aren't going to hear from us again until January. And so I think it's a great time to just take stock of, the year that has been 2021. and how strange that year is, but also, what opportunities exist for next year, and what we learned from this year, and what great things happen. And, I would just, kind of end and kind of wrap it up by saying, in many ways, I think 2021 was a lot weirder than 2020.
I think a lot of people would agree with you.
I don't know can you put your finger on why?
I think that because the 2020 was such an anomalous year in so many ways, that it was completely unexpected, and I think, traumatic for people in so many different ways, that we're like, oh great, we're through this year. 2021 is going to be so much better just because it's not 2020. And as one of my friends just said, 2021 was just 2020 in a wig. So, it's been a lot weirder. But I guess the funny thing is that people can get used to anything, and I think that you're seeing, I don't know if it's people getting worn down or just becoming more able to just say, okay, fine, whatever, bring it, just getting more comfortable with that. But I'm hoping that, headed into the new year, that we don't lose sight of, you got to stay positive. You got to stay focused on, how to be better, how to do better, how to rise to the occasion, rise to the moment. Because this is a really fantastic moment for our entire industry, and really be a force for positive change.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of the, that's the moment. It's like, so, all I would say is, I hope that everyone has the opportunity to do what we've been doing, very recently, which is taking stock of all the amazing things that happened in 2021 and all the amazing opportunities that exist to, continue to innovate and do incredible things in 2022. And there is, a moment that's happening right now where we get to turn the page. And, it's just a cultural phenomena of, moving from the end of one year into the beginning of the next. And I, just strongly believe, and I know that, people outside of the Starr Conspiracy are going to think this is crazy. I just strongly believe that we've made more progress as, a society in 2020 and 2021 than we have in, 50 or 60 years. I think so many amazing things have happened, and there's been so much clarity around what's important in life and what's not, that we have a platform to, change things in a significant way that undo some of the crazy, funky wiring of, like how society has worked, like the relationship between companies and people for decades. It's a huge opportunity. It makes me incredibly excited. And, it's not like we don't have what we need to make this change happen. There is a limitless supply of money that's flowing into work tech saying, who wants to make the world a better place? Here's $105 million. It's like, we've got people who want to buy stuff to, basically create the company that they've always wanted. So you've got the supply, you've got the demand, you've got the context. We've got everything that we need, for the first time that it's ever happened in my life, to truly make the world a better place. And if we just look at what we learned in 2021 and what's possible in 2022, then I think that we are close to creating the most amazing planet ever. Best Earth ever.
Best Earth ever. I think that's a great place to end it, Bret.
I'll hit the stop button then. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.